Today, we're going to learn about how to remove a photo bomber, a picture that you've taken. There's in the background. You don't want them to be there. There are some great tools in Photoshop to make this happen. We're going to be learning about some of these basic tools. It's one of my favorite assignments that we do in class because it feels like magic. So the first thing that you need to do once you've got Photoshop open is you need to open the picture that you took that's got your photobomber in it. Here's my picture. Before we get started on removing me, the pesky photobomber in the background, what I want us to do is first a couple of helpful best practices. So the first thing I want you to do is in this bottom right corner where it says layers, I want you to click on the background and we're going to duplicate the layer. Now, if for some reason you're not seeing this, this palette here in the corner, you can get to it by coming up here to the window menu. I'll uncheck it here, so now it's gone. And click on window, and let's find layers, and there we are. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on what's called the background layer, and I'm going to duplicate it. I'm just going to leave it named the same thing, background. Rename it if you want. What this does for us is this now gives us a layer that we can play with, and if something goes wrong, we can always get back to our original picture. Okay, that's one tool that I think is very helpful. Another one that isn't there usually by default is your history palette. So if you click on that, it'll pop up usually up here. Now if you click on it, you can drag it and see how it highlights blue. And I don't want the comments, so I'm going to go to window and uncheck comments. I don't want that one. So now you can see that in the history tab, it keeps a copy of everything that we've done since we started. So like, for instance, if I was to grab the crop tool, for instance, and I cropped it, now you can see, all right, I did the eraser, oops, I didn't mean to do that. All I have to do is I can go back to the duplicate layer and I get to where I want to be. Another handy tool is, no pun intended, is the hand tool. If you click on it, it allows you to move your image around where you want it on the screen. It also has the benefit, if you double click it, it will take your image and it will fill the screen real estate that you have to work with. Then the next thing that's a useful tool is the magnification tool or the zoom tool. And you can get there by clicking on it, or you can type the Z key and it gets you to the same place. So I'm going to click near me and I move the mouse a little bit. And that's going to allow me to zoom in. And that's going to allow me to see the area that I'm working with a little bit better. Okay, so the next tool that I want us to work with is the clone stamp tool. And so it looks like a little stamp up here. And again, you can click on it, or I'm just going to press the letter S. Okay. Now I can see I've got a little brush, and that's kind of small for what I want. So what I'm going to do is on my keyboard, the left and right braces. If I do the right brace, it makes my brush bigger. The left brush makes brace. So that's up above it's next to the enter key on your keyboard. Makes your brush bigger. Okay, now if I just try to draw with this, it's going to come up with this error message because I haven't defined where I want it to copy from. So I'm going to make this just a little smaller, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key. Now, when you've got something in your image, like I do in this background, there's this line that's going on right behind my head. I want that line to continue existing. So when I hold down the Alt key, see how it changes my brush to this kind of crosshairs? I'm going to aim it right at that line. And now if I move the brush around, you can see it's remembering that spot. So now if I come down and I line up, oh, notice my opacity is set to 68%. That can be really helpful for blending, but to start us off, I'm going to move that back up to 100%. All right, so now as I draw, if you look above that circle, you can see a little plus. That plus is telling it where it's copying from. And as I move, it moves down. Okay, and so I can hold down the Alt key again, and I can click just below. And again, I want to line up. Okay, now notice when I was drawing, it copied part of my hat again. So even as you're erasing, it will copy what was there immediately before. So sometimes people have a little bit of confusion with that, and it causes some grief there. All right, so now I can start to erase myself out of this picture. All right, so I'm just going to go along, and I'm going to continue changing. Now, I like to use short strokes because if I ever need to undo, again, I can look at my history brush. You can see all of these different brush strokes that I've done. Sometimes when I was new at this, I would draw long strokes, and then I'd find myself backed into a corner where I'd erase something I didn't mean to erase. I'd hit undo, and the whole thing was undone. And I don't like that. Okay, so again, there's this kind of diagonal line, and I kind of want to keep that diagonal line. And you know, here I've got to get rid of my arm. There's this line going on where the flat part of the rock goes straight up. I'm going to line that up so that I can erase that out, and I can start erasing my stomach out of this picture. And again, if I do short strokes, then I'm less likely to copy my own hand. Now, one thing you do want to watch out for is you want to watch out for repeating patterns in things that your eye is expecting to look random. So if I hit the Z key, I can zoom in. I've repeated these same rocks now 4 times, and that looks a little bit confusing. So if I hit the S key to get back to my stamp tool, and the braces to kind of make that smaller, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lower my opacity to maybe about 50%, and I'm going to hold down the Alt, and I'm going to copy some of these rocks from up above, and that's going to get rid of some of that repeated pattern, and it's going to make it more of its own self. All right, so I'm going to double click on the hand to zoom back out, and so you can see I'm beginning to be erased. Now, if I go back to my layers, if I'm curious to see, well, what did it look like before? Okay, there I am before, and now you can see where I'm starting to be erased. And this is the basic process. So I think this is the point where I'm going to probably pause the video, and I'm just going to go ahead and continue erasing this out. Yeah, I think this is basically, unless I want to add like the selection tool. I think I do it. All right. So as you're erasing the person out of your picture, sometimes you're going to find there's parts of your image that you want to keep, and you don't want to accidentally erase it out. And so here's an example, right? My niece's arm is part of what I want to keep. I don't want to get rid of that. So what I can do is I can use the selection tool. In this case, there's multiple different selection tools, but I'm going to use the lasso tool, or a version of the lasso tool. By right click on it, I can select magnetic lasso tool. And what that will do is it automatically looks for borders between things. And it kind of makes drawing easier. So it can tell that her arm is clearly a different color than my leg. And so it will try to natural. Now, sometimes it'll get it wrong. So like if I go out here, sometimes, so if you click yourself, it'll add a point and it won't finish until you get to back to where you started. So if you'll notice, as I mouse over, the cursor changes and adds that little circle. When I click, now you've got what they call, you've got your selection made. And you know that if you've made a selection because you've got, they call it the ants marching around the edge. Okay, I'm gonna hit the zoom, the Z key so that I can zoom in a little bit closer. So now, if I switch back over to the stamp tool and I use the Alt key and I select this area over here to copy from, as I draw, oh, I want my opacity back to 100%. As I draw, I can't accidentally draw over her arm. Now I can see a couple of spots where my selection wasn't perfect. You can see there's a little bit of dark there, but it won't let me draw. It won't let me draw there because it's not in my selection. Okay, so now I've got the selection. I'm done with it. I want to finish. Oh, oops! I accidentally copied that rock. Okay, when I'm done with the selection tool, I don't want that to be limited in where I can draw. What I can do is I can hit Control D. And so now I've still got this line, but if I choose my selection, I can draw over that line. I don't have that same problem of it being too close to her arm where I'm worried that I'm going to accidentally erase part of her arm. All right, if I double click the hand, here we go. To save on time in this video, I went ahead and fast forwarded to where I've now erased myself completely out of this picture, and we're ready to save what we've got done. We still have that original background layer, and I'm going to make another video. That background layer can now be useful if we decide that we want to make an animated GIF, kind of show the before and after. I'll make that into a different video. But for now, it's time to save. And for this assignment, I want you to save it two different ways. The first way is as a Photoshop file. So Photoshop has the last three letters of .psd. So you're going to go up to the File menu. You're going to say Save As. And make sure you go to the folder where you want it to be. And because you've got multiple layers, it should automatically give you the option of a Photoshop file, so .psd. So I'm going to call this Mr. Connolly Photobomb. Okay, and then I'm going to hit save. It's going to say compatibility. I think that's fine. We'll say OK. Now, the reason I want you to save that is because that Photoshop file will be useful for the next thing. But for turning in this assignment, I want you to save this as a JPEG, which works well in Google Classroom and other places on the internet. JPEGs are very common all over the internet. So for that, it's not going to let you just save it as a JPEG because it's got multiple layers. So if you look at the file type options, it doesn't give you that option because JPEG doesn't remember your layers. It will lose them. So we're going to go over here to this layer palette, and here in the corner, flatten image. Flatten image, and that'll automatically take all of our layers and make them into one layer. So now, if we do File, Save As, again, we don't want to save over our other file. We want to save it a different file. We're going to change our type to JPEG, JPEG or .jpg. Okay, we want to rename it. So I'm going to call this one Mr. Connolly app. So now your original JPEG with the photobomber in it, that's what you're gonna upload as your before. And then, oh, sorry, I already did it once before, so there you go. So this is the tutorial of how to do photobombing. Like I said, I'm gonna make another video here in a little bit that will show how you can turn this, the 2 layers ones that we made into an animated GIF, which I think is also a lot of fun. All right, I'm gonna hope you enjoyed and talk to you next time.